Good evening from Vietnam, Mark. Good morning to you. Thanks a lot for spending your morning joining our show and share your stories to our global audience. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, we want to say thank you to you.
Well, it's my pleasure. I always love sharing good ideas with good people.
Beautiful. And since you haven't been to our country, now you have a new friend. So if just your family, you decided to travel to Asia, make sure you put Vietnam on the map. And we'll be here. We will love to, we'd love to take you and your family around to show our people and our cities. Okay.
I would love to do that. I've traveled a great deal internationally. I've spoken in 14 or 15 countries, but I haven't had the pleasure of visiting Vietnam yet, but I hope that happens soon.
Yeah, I hope so too. There's a lot of leaders listening to our show, from Vietnam. So hopefully that some of them will, we enjoy having you to their organization for the big events for them, the company. Who knows, well, who's watching, right?
You never know.
You never know. You never know. But for the little taste of our culture, Mark, it's very honor for our audience to have you to do a little introduction about who you are and the works you are doing. Would you do that first, please?
Sure. Well, when I was a little kid in the single digits, my dream was to be a rock star. The problem was I never learned to play an instrument. And I think that's the problem with a lot of dreams. We have dreams, but we don't do the work. We don't invest the time to develop the skills. Well, my second goal happened when I was about 10. I was in a speaking contest. And I know that sounds odd, but there are a lot of contests, public speaking contests for young people here in the U.S. and I'm sure abroad as well. But the long and short of the story is I did so badly. I was so embarrassed in this contest that it made me decide I wanted to learn how to speak. In other words, it was the disappointment and the defeat that motivated me, not the victory or the success. So from the age of 10 on, I started studying public speakers and entering contests. Typically a contest, the speech length was 3 to 5 minutes. But all of that work became building blocks for later in my life when I had a chance and was invited to speak at a high school commencement. I was 19 years old, and some of the leadership at that school had seen me speak, and so they invited me to speak, and the spirit of capitalism set in, and I said, sure, I'd love to do it, but I charge. And they said, that's not a problem. How much? Well, how much was a problem because I didn't know how much I should charge. This was a long time ago, and $150 seemed like a huge amount of money. So I said, $150. And they said, great. And that was how I began speaking professionally. A professional speaker is simply somebody who gets paid, whether they get paid a little or a lot, to give a speech. So then I started speaking when I spent about 7 years in that role, but I knew that someday I wanted to be a full-time professional speaker. I also knew that I needed something to speak about, so I spent a lot of time gathering as many experiences and developing as many skills as I could. And at the age of 27, I went into the business of public speaking full-time. Since then, I've given some 30, I've been in the business 37, 38 years, spoken to more than 3,200 audiences and written 8 books. So it's been a great ride. I love, as I said at the very beginning, sharing ideas because, ideas can change the world. Ideas can change our lives. But the real power of an idea isn't in hearing it or knowing it. It's in doing it. So I always say the difference between excellence and mediocrity is the distance between common knowledge and consistent application.
Constant knowledge and consistent application. Wow.
Common knowledge and consistent application. So many people, we all know a lot, even if we aren't that educated. We're street smart, we've got life experience, maybe we've got formal learning, but it's the application of that knowledge that creates results.
Wow. I want to bring you to the age of 10 when you were frightened giving the public speaking, right? And it was terribly delivered. And a lot of people, because of such experience, they're gonna fear of public speaking, or they're gonna avoiding it, and they're gonna try to stay away from it forever. But you, at the age of 10, decided you're gonna face it heads on and join the contest and get better at speaking publicly. So What happened back then in your head?
That's a great question. I have come to believe that we enjoy success, but we learn a lot more from failure. And when people are set or face a setback like I did at the age of 10, you know, you really have two choices. One is you can quit. And what we typically say is that really didn't matter. I don't care. And more often than not, when people say that, it really did matter, but it's a way to protect their self-esteem. I don't know why I made a different decision. Maybe it was good parenting. Maybe I just genetically like challenge. But I said to myself, this really does matter, and I never want to be this embarrassed again. So it was out of that loss that I began to learn. And what's interesting is that people say they're afraid of public speaking as adults. It's probably even more frightening when you're 10 years old and your audience is full of adults. But if I had won that first contest, I really don't know if I would have gone on to become a professional speaker.
And at the age 19, when you got a chance to be and charge $150 for your speak for the first time, okay, there could be any number in why the 150 resonated back to the 19 years old Mark.
Well, I had a roommate in college who worked at a fast food restaurant. And I think at the time he made $150 every 2 weeks. And he smelled like a French fry when he came home from work. And, you know, it was hot, hard work. I respected him for it. But I remember thinking, wow, maybe I can get paid in a 30-minute speech what he gets paid to work 2 weeks in fast food. And I think, I'm not sure, frankly, but I think that's maybe where I came up with the number.
Wow.
He went on to become a great success, by the way. He doesn't work in fast food anymore, but he did go on to become very successful in finance.
And that at that pivotal moment, Mark, you can still doing so many other things in your life, right? You could be a salesperson, a marketer, a computer scientist also, but you decided, okay, from that point forward, you're gonna become a professional public speaker. So what was on your head when you made that decision?
Well, when I was 10, I knew I wanted to learn to speak. I didn't really think about professional speaking until I was maybe 16 or 17, and I read a lot. I still do. And I'd read a book or two by Og Mandino, and Og Mandino came to Akron, Ohio, about an hour and a half from where I lived, to speak, you know, kind of what today we would call a success rally or seminar. And so I bought a ticket and I drove an hour and a half, and I sat in the audience, and Og, who I got to know later a little bit through the National Speakers Association, Og talked about being homeless in Cleveland, Ohio, and to get in out of the elements, he would go into the public library and just read voraciously. And of course, the rest of his story is he later went on to become one of the best-selling self-help authors of all time and a very successful speaker. And that's when I realized that's what Og now did for a living. He gave speeches. And that's really where the idea of the skill and the money came together for me. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was lucky because early on, probably at the age of 18 or so, I joined the National Speakers Association. Now there's the Global Speakers Federation, but back then, the National Speakers Association was a very new organization. And what I decided is, even though I wasn't a professional speaker yet, I wanted to learn how to be, so when the time was right, I could. A really important lesson in life is to learn what you need to learn before you need it. If you wait until you need it, then you've got a lag time. If it takes you a year to learn something and you don't start learning it until you need to know it, that slows you down by a year. So I learned about the business and the stagecraft of professional speaking, and that's why I didn't go full-time until I was 27, but I was laying the foundation of doing two things: getting experience in business, because even to this day, I don't call myself a business speaker. I call myself a business person who speaks, because business, finance, economics, those are my first loves and my greatest knowledge base. but I was gaining the experience and developing the skills. So at a pretty young age, 27, I could become a full-time professional speaker.
Beautiful. Then writing. What happened to the writing? You know, speaking, but writing was never a dream when you was young, right? One digit age,
No.
not two digit age, also not. So when writing become a profession, the love.
While I was in college, I worked part-time for a magazine. And even though I later went into sales, at the time I had been hired to do some editorial work. And they would let me drive to places and interview people and write articles. And I learned that there is a difference, but it wasn't a complete difference between the spoken word and the written word. They're two different skill sets, but they're close enough that you can use some of the same skills in both places. So I started writing, found out I was an okay writer back then. And it was about 1990 when everyone in the speaking business believed, and it's still true, at least partially, that you needed a book, that the book would help grow your business. And so that's when I started writing. My first book I wrote with a small publisher, and it didn't sell a lot, but whenever I spoke for a client about the topic of teamwork, they wanted a copy of the book. So the book was more of a marketing piece or a value add than it was a lead for me. Well, the next book, I wrote a few chapters for some anthologies. I participated in some projects, but it wasn't really until 2004 that I published The Fred Factor. And that was picked up by, at the time, Random House. And that was a story that happened to me back in 1988. But all those intervening years, I couldn't get a publisher to be interested. And today, we just relaunched, when I say today, last Saturday, a week ago Saturday, we just relaunched the 20th anniversary edition of The Fred Factor. And it sold about 2 million copies internationally. It's been a bestseller in India and China. I don't know, I'm not sure. The book's in about 20 languages, so I'm not always sure what language it's in. But have you ever seen The Fred Factor there in Vietnam?
We have a copy in English here in Vietnam, but the translation I will double check. And it's worth to talk to a publisher over here to see if it's yet translated. This is a good way, you know, good one for them to start investing their time to do it. So I'll talk to some people here next week, because we're gonna have a meeting anyway with two of the largest publisher anyway. So I'll talk about that one.
Oh,
And then if they find it interest, I will introduce to you. Okay.
That'd be terrific. Thank you.
Tell me and tell the audience, what did you do differently? That, you know, anything you touch, you make it really, really outstanding result. If you becoming a speaker,
Well,
you become the top of the you know, on the top league, and if you've written in the author, then you have a best-selling books. What did you do differently?
well, part of it is luck. You know, people say you make your own luck, and that is partially true, but sometimes there are just things that happen that are fortuitous. I feel very fortunate. I don't. I'll answer your question in a minute, but you know, my books have sold well. I'm not a Hemingway-like author. I mean, my prose is not, you know, that level. But what I try to do is I try to write for the common man or woman, someone like myself, someone like you, because we're all ordinary people when we wake up in the morning. And it's not that we were born extraordinary. We become extraordinary by what we choose to do. And so I like writing books that help people. I'm not, I would love for fun someday to write fiction, but it would take me a long time to learn that skill set. I think that, the reason I'm successful is persistence. I've always said I'm never going to be the most successful or the smartest or the strongest or the best looking, but I will always try to be the hardest working person in my business. So I grew up on a farm, and when you grow up on a farm, hard work is not an option. Nobody ever asked me if I wanted to work. I got up every day when there were cows to feed or hay to bale or crops to plant. and it was a blessing because I just thought hard work was the only choice. So I learned to work hard early on, and I learned later that it's where you direct that hard work. I directed that towards speaking and writing, and I have had as much or more failure as anyone, but you don't notice the failures, you notice the successes. So it creates the perception that, you know, everything, you know, you've done has been successful. I don't want to get into, there's too many stories, but I've had enough failures that it's helped me become more successful, because every failure you learn what not to do, or you learn what to do differently.
So tell us one time is the biggest failure in your life and how you deal with that, though.
Yeah, I've been asked that question many times, and I've had I ran for the board of directors for an association, and I was really disappointed when I didn't get nominated. But years later, when I did get nominated and then went on to become the national president, I realized that if I had been nominated too soon, I wouldn't have had the maturity or the network to be as successful as I was later. So at the time I was disappointed, but you know, I believe everything works together for good, and we don't often see it until years down the road, and sometimes, you know, we never see it. But I kind of live by faith that that is the case. When I was in college, I ran for the president of my fraternity and was not elected. I was beaten by somebody that I thought, you know, didn't have the leadership skills, but obviously the people that voted for him thought he did. And that in itself was a big disappointment. But what I learned is, because I didn't want to be seen as a bad loser, I took on a job with what they in the fraternities Greek world call rush chairman. You're the recruiter, you're the salesperson for the fraternity. And I took it on for the wrong reasons. I took it on because I didn't want to be seen as a sore loser, not because I wanted to do it. And so there was a big disconnect between the commitment and enthusiasm I brought, and I didn't do a good job, and I accept responsibility for that. But what I learned is you've got to be very clear on your commitment and motives, because if you do anything for the wrong reasons, and that's what a lot of failure is, doing the wrong things for the wrong reasons, it can backfire. So again, I was able to extract a lesson from that so that I didn't repeat that same mistake again.
Beautiful. I think that Steve Jobs said that the dogs can only connect in backward, right? And that is from every experience, you create the dog toward the future instead of backwards. So teach us that mentality of how you look, how you extract the insights from every failure or every success, and make important changes, though.
Well, there's probably two terms, at least one term that the listeners and viewers have heard before, and that's called a post-mortem. When somebody passes away, they do a post-mortem or an autopsy to see why they died. When a project fails, you get together with your team, or you sit down and you do a post-mortem where you analyze what went wrong, what could have been done better. And I would say very specifically, after any significant event, there's three questions you can ask yourself. What went right? Because you want to keep doing what works. What went wrong? And what could I have done better? So when you're doing the after the fact examination, what went right? What went wrong? What could I do better? There's another powerful tool called a pre-mortem. A pre-mortem is where before you do something, you ask yourself, what must go right? What might go wrong? And what can I do better than I'm planning to do? So in other words, instead of only benefiting from those insights after the fact, you can plan ahead to avoid the mistakes, capitalize on the strengths, and look for some ways to add value. When I work with a client and I develop a speech or a seminar, one of the things that I always, two things that I always try to do that have served me very well, and one is I try to get to know my client and their audience very, very well. I can't do their jobs. I don't work in their company, but I want to know what their lives are like, what their challenges are, what they're proud of, what they're afraid of, what they sell, who their competitors are. Because That allows me to take my material and combine it with their organization and create this kind of hybrid vigor where my speech becomes very relevant, because that's
Mm.
key. An audience needs to feel not like, wow, that's interesting or that's good, but I can use that. The second thing I do is I always look for little ways I can add value, things I can do better. One of the things I learned a long time ago is some clients like to be able to extend the value of your presentation through video or audio. So I said to a client 2 or 3 years ago, I said to the company president, why don't I interview you and you interview me, and we'll put together 6 1 or 2 minute little videos. I won't charge you any extra. I'm already there. It won't take very long. And then your HR department can mail those out, email them out every month, every 2 weeks, and you'll have a way to follow up. Well, certainly someone could charge for that, but for me, it was a big value add because they were already paying me well. It was something easy for me to do, but something very valuable for them. So the post-mortem is after the fact, but the pre-mortem is anticipating what could go wrong and making sure that it doesn't.
Beautiful. My coach, he's from England. He always tell me that opportunity is always running in front of our eyes, everybody's eyes, right? But if whoever can see the opportunities and be able to catch the opportunity when it comes, will reap the benefits. So not only that you have the 3 questions asking before the events to happen, but also come up with the ideas by catching the opportunity and make it additional values to your clients. So how did it happen in your experience that give you the advantage of seeing the always creating the values for other like that?
Well, I'm not the world's best opportunity spotter, but I continue to see examples here in my neighborhood. A year ago, we had a tornado come through, like a hurricane or a typhoon. A lot of damage was done, and a lot of roofs were damaged. And so in this neighborhood, after damaged roofs got replaced, insurance companies have to come out and do what they call a final inspection to make sure the work was done right. Well, I kept noticing there would be a couple ladders on the sides of houses and nobody using the ladders when I saw them. But then later, the ladders would disappear. And yesterday, as I was leaving my neighborhood, I saw people loading up ladders on a trailer, and the side of their truck said, final inspection ladder service. So think about this. You've got your inspector. He or she, to carry a big ladder is very difficult. So somebody saw an opportunity and said, you can hire us, tell us where you're going to be, when you want the ladders, we'll deliver the ladders, put them up, you do the inspection, we'll take the ladders down and haul them away. And I thought, that's brilliant. There's obviously an opportunity there that's profitable. And that's really why I think that if you want to spot opportunity, you should ask yourself 2 questions. One is, how can I make someone's life easier? How can I make it more convenient, right? The other is, how can I make someone's life more successful? And when you look, for instance, in financial services, I'm on the board of a financial services company. We look at how we can help investors not only enjoy good returns, but do it ethically and do it morally. We specialize in not making a trade-off between where you invest and how well you do. You don't have to separate the two. You can be an ethical, moral investor. You can avoid investments that you personally disagree with and still be very successful in the investment community. So one is, how can I make people's lives easier? And the second question to spot opportunity is, how can I make people more successful?
Beautiful. You ask yourself a lot of good questions, a lot of big questions, Mark. So out of the many questions you've been asking yourself over the years, what kind of question, which question do you like to ask yourself most?
Well, I heard someone say years ago, and I don't know who originally said it, but I've shared it with many, many audiences, that you should put yourself in the place of maximum opportunity. So one of the questions I ask myself when I'm trying to decide whether to go to an event or invest in a conference or take a trip is, is this a place of maximum opportunity? Now, some things in life we do just because we want to and we enjoy them, and that's great. I'm not saying everything should be about becoming more successful or making more money. But when you look at your business, you look at the limited time you have in your life, you know, where are the places of maximum opportunity? And when I speak at an association conference where people voluntarily took time off from work, paid money to go, those are people that have put themselves in a place of maximum opportunity. You know, whether it's learning or whether it's coaching, whether it's an online course, what opportunities will give us a chance to be better or give us the skills to be better? I ask that a lot. But the other thing I ask is the question I just referred to. How can I add value? I think one of the key tenets of the Fred Factor is that you can add value to anything you do and it doesn't have to cost a nickel. You know, you can outthink rather than outspend your competition. I'll give you an example. Years and years ago, I was working with a pizza delivery company. I mean, they made the pizzas, but it was home delivery. And the pizza business, I don't know what it's like in Vietnam, very competitive here. And they said, we have great pizza, but how do we get more people to order from us, or how do we get people to order from us again? And I said, well, here's an idea. Give every delivery person a bag of candy and a bag of dog bones. If a little kid comes to the door, as little kids do, if mom or dad opens the door, the little kid's right there, ask the mom or dad if you can give them a piece of candy. And if they say yes, give that kid a piece of candy. The next time mom or dad orders a pizza, the kid will demand they order it from you. Daddy, Daddy, get the pizza with the candy. Or if you notice they have a dog, we're dog lovers, we have dogs, ask if you can give the dog a treat. And if you do, that differentiates you. By the way, the pizza has to be good. You can't substitute a dog bone or a piece of candy for bad pizza. But if the pizza is good, that adds enough value that you get the reorder or you get the order the next time.
Beautiful.
That's about adding value. And there's so many ways to do it.
See, those little things, if we can add on to what we are doing every day, right? And little improvement like that will lead into extraordinary result, and which leads to this conversation we're having today. Because I'm intrigued by what you put on your profile. Is you have a framework that can help people to be extraordinary. Okay, tell us about that framework.
I think people think extraordinary is a giant leap. But if you think about the word, it doesn't say massive ordinary. It says extraordinary. It's a little bit more. Sometimes you can be extraordinary by doing a lot more. But my fellow speaker, Peter Vidmar, I learned from him years ago. He was an Olympic athlete. He said people think that people who win a gold medal at the Olympics must train 2 or 3 hours more than their competitors. He said they can't. They're already training at a high level. There's no 2 or 3 more hours you can train. He said it's the extra 5 or 10 minutes on the mat that makes the difference. It's that little extra. An extra 5 or 10 minutes over the course of a year turns into an extraordinary performance. The other thing people need to understand is, you know, we talk about quantum leaps, and quantum leaps are always construed as big changes and improvement. The actual quantum leap is the smallest distance that an atom can travel. It is a tiny movement, and it's the movement that creates the massive change, not the distance. And so to have a quantum leap, sometimes all it takes is a little idea that can make a big difference. And when we try to do something massive, we often fail. But when we do a lot of little extras, cumulatively, they become extraordinary. So in the Fred Factor, I talk about you know, how to create value. I say there's basically 5 ways to create value: more, better, different, less, or funner. Funner being more fun. And I also talk about you can become extraordinary by building better relationships with your coworkers, with your vendors, with your customers. So that's kind of a quick framework. I also wrote a book called Upgrade. I think it's out of print. It's not one of my best books, but Upgrade was about how to go from version 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0. And one of the big lessons in that book was to add value to everything you do. Or let me put it differently. Add value to the important things you do. Some things you just do, get done, do them right. But look for the important things that you can add value to, the products you deliver, the services you provide.
Beautiful. Hey, Mark, I have this question sent by our audience, and they would like to know how a day looks like for you.
Ah, I have a pretty good routine. It took me. I'm a firstborn. I'm an A-type personality. I like routine. Not everybody does. Some people seem to do better when they're spontaneous. That would not be me. But I get up in the morning. First thing I do is I know some people caution against it, but I've been able to reduce my email to maybe 8 or 10 important emails in the morning that I get. I'm very, very rigorous about filters and the emails that I receive. Then I do a quick glance at social media, and I do two things every day to stimulate my thinking. I'm 65. I'll be 66 this month. And one of the things we've learned is that the more you stimulate the brain, it's a way to put cognitive decline at bay. It's also a way to stay sharper. I do 2 New York Times puzzles. One is called Wordle, Wordle. You can Google it anywhere in the world and do it for free. The other is called Connections. And I do those 2 word games. Then I look at CNN and the Wall Street Journal online and kind of get an overview of what's going on in the world. And that whole process takes me 30 to 45 minutes. 6 days a week, then I go to the gym or I do cardiovascular because, I believe it's hard to live a high performance life in a low performance body. And so I work very hard. I'm not a stickler. I try to eat well, but I'm not fanatical. But exercise is good both for physiology and for psychology. Then after that, I have my day that I've scheduled. So the next thing is I came home and got ready for my time, this interview with you. After this, I have 2 more things scheduled today. And then this afternoon, my wife has some things she wants me to do. And if it's speech day, I fly in the night before. I am already prepped, but I make sure I get a good night's sleep. I give my presentation. Often I'll stay a second night because of either travel or just the opportunity to interact with the client. And then I'll either fly to my next speaking engagement or fly home. But I believe having a routine that is flexible is key to consistent high performance.
Beautiful. Since you mentioned the word thinking, and you also share 2 ways for you to improve your ability to think and exercise your brain. My wife and I, we've been interviewed in every interview that we had, and it's been over 1,000 interviews by now. We asked this same question, Mark, and we want to ask from you also because we believe our thinking ability these days are diminishing because so many reasons, right? And if we can pick up ideas, pick up some insights from the people who are great thinkers like you, and people can listen to those insights and can apply to their life. They can get their ability to think better, and then that is the whole start of the change process. All right. So the question is,
Right.
how have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
Well, for me, that's a particularly good question because I've studied thinking a lot. I believe that what we think creates what we do, and what we do creates how we feel. Now, sometimes feelings can create behavior, but more often than not, positive emotion comes from good behavior. However, good behavior comes from good thinking. And there's really 2 kinds of thinking. Critical thinking is trying to find a subjective conclusion. People say, and this is really a misnomer, they'll say, well, my reality is different than your reality. Reality is independent of you or me. My experience, my opinion, my conclusions, my emotions from that reality may well be different. But I don't have my own little universe where gravity doesn't work, I don't need to eat, and I'm 12 feet tall. So somebody once said that critical thinking or that good thinking is about the pursuit of reality. It's about getting as much good information as you can to then make an informed decision or take not good action, but the best action. I think a lot of people today let emotions confirm their thinking, rather than thinking inform their conclusions. When we hear something we like or agree with, we tend not to, it's called information bias. If I ride a Suzuki motorcycle, I will notice more Suzuki motorcycles than any other motorcycle. Why? Because I have an information bias, and I could erroneously conclude more people ride Suzuki motorcycles than Honda or Yamaha. I'm making this up. I don't know the numbers. I used to be a motorcyclist. Well, if you want to believe that, and in politics, it's regrettable that truth seems to be in short supply. Politicians seem to think that by saying it with enough conviction, it makes it true. And if we agree with that politician, then we think it's true. And that, in large part, in my opinion, is how any country, the U.S. or any country, gets into a mess. It begins with bad thinking. And so there's a great book that I've recommended many times. If you want a single book that's pretty comprehensive about better thinking, it's called Super Thinking. You can get it on Amazon, or you probably get it Super Thinking. And I don't remember, I had to store all my books because we're having some work done in our house. I typically would have it on the shelf on the bookcase behind me, but I don't remember. There's two authors. I believe it's a male and a female author, but it's Super Thinking. And it's not just a book you sit down and read. It's a book that you jump around in and you learn about thinking. By the way, if people are interested, I write about thinking some at my marksanborn.com/articles. So if you search, I've written a lot about thinking mistakes, how to think better. So just go to marksanborn.com/articles, and in the search bar, put in thinking, and I think you'll find some good resources to get started, at least in the pursuit of thinking better.
Beautiful, beautiful. I definitely will do that, and I definitely will promote the website so that the people can go there and learning from your insights also. Mark, I have three more questions before we conclude this conversation. Okay, and I'm gonna bring you back, but I need to decide between when you one digit age or two digit age at the moment. So you pick. Where you want me to pick to bring you back?
Give me the options again.
When you was in the age of one digit and when you're in the age of two digit in the 19. So which one?
Let's go for two digits. I didn't know a whole lot when I was in the one digit.
Alrighty, so let's bring you back into the 19 years old, the boy that get $150 for the speaking engagement. And assuming that you had the opportunity to travel time and see you at that moment, all right, what would you tell yourself to get the money? How much?
Oh, well, I have an unusual perspective. I know this isn't the question you're asking, but people often say, if you could change one thing about your life, what would you change? And let me give you the answer and then I'll explain it. I wouldn't change anything. Not because I haven't done stupid stuff. If I could change anything, it wouldn't be me. It would be anyone I've hurt or not done right by. That I would change because that impacted them. But if I changed anything about my life, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I think God is smart enough, with the good, the bad, and in between, to have brought me here, and to go back in time and change something changes the whole outcome. We might not be sitting here today having that conversation. In terms of how much to charge, I think I was clever in that I had a basic idea, knowing that schools paid for commencement speakers, that they'd have $150, and that if I said, $5,000, they would have hung up the phone on me. If I'd have said $25, I'd have said that's not enough. So it was as much it was more of an intuitive way to price than anything else. But what I would tell that 19-year-old guy, kid, young person, is it's more important, if you want to become a good speaker, it's more important to be out there speaking than it is to get a lot of money for a single speech. I'd rather give 50 speeches a year for $5,000 than 3 speeches a year for 50,000. Because first of all, you've got to be in front of audiences to get hired. And anybody that's starting out, whether it's landscaping or whatever you do, well, the more that people see your work, the more people are going to try to hire you to do the work. If you just wait until somebody pays you a lot of money, and by the way, why would you pay a landscaper a lot of money if they said, by the way, I've never done it before, but I've read some good books, and yours is the first yard I'm going to work on, right? So I would have said something that I learned later, and that is, don't overcharge, because it's better right now to be busier than it is to have a high fee. And the busier you become, then you can increase your fee to get your activity level down. So that's what I would have reiterated to my 19-year-old self.
Thank you very much for answering that question very beautifully, Mark. Like you said earlier, also, like, learn before you need it, right? So learn the skill before you need it, because by the time you need it and you start to learn, it's already late. So it's slower than the.
Well, I had one of the first websites for speakers at the time, very, very, very long time ago. I wasn't the first, but I was an early adapter, and I always got asked, "Are you making any money from your website?" And I always said, "Not yet," because I knew that someday websites could make me money. They weren't then, so why did I have a website? To learn how to do websites. I started studying artificial intelligence, and of course now it's pretty commonplace and it's very accessible, but I started looking at it. I wasn't an early adapter, but I was ahead of the curve, because I knew it was going to be a technology that had great impact. And if you know something's going to have great impact, don't wait. Figure out and learn as much as you can before it does.
The second question, Mark, is about writing. It's been a few years of quieting without any new books from you. So when are you going to introduce a new one for us?
My last book came out just before COVID in September of 2019. It's called The Intention Imperative. And I'm not sure I'm going to write any more books, but I do continue to write a lot and in shorter pieces. And most of it is either at LinkedIn, and anyone that wants to connect and LinkedIn, just reference this show. And I do publish there regularly. And the other thing is what we used to call blogs, and now we call articles. So I don't know. I don't want to, never say never, but I don't know that I'm going to do another book. Writing books is fun. Selling books is hard. It's not enough to have a book if nobody reads it. So having a good book is only half of the formula. The other half of the formula is getting a lot of people to buy that good book and to actually read it.
Yep. The last question is about the future. Okay, so we traveled the past. We know what you do in the moment. It's not fair. We're not talking about the future. Okay, so is there anything that exciting you are working on you want to share with me and the audience so that we can celebrate with you in advance?
There are a lot of things I'm excited about. I'm excited about both my sons. My wife and I have our oldest son is a Marine aviator, and he's about to get his wings and will be flying the most advanced jet airplane in the world. So I get excited about people who I love and what they get excited about. Our younger son is a realtor and an owner in a rental property that we own as a family, and he's learning the real estate business and the rental property business. I'm excited about that. In terms of what I'm working on, being on the board of this new startup financial services firm, the founder, it's his second act. He built a very successful firm and sold it. Now that his non-compete has expired, he's building another firm. And I'm excited about that because A, I'm a customer, so I have skin in the game. And by the way, Nassim Taleb says, don't give your money to people that don't have skin in the game. You might want to ask somebody not what stocks should I buy, but what stocks do you own if you want to know whether or not they have skin in the game. So I'm excited about the opportunities there. But I just continue to be excited about learning. I'm fortunate. My mom and dad were both big on education. My mom was a teacher. My dad was an avid reader. And I think other than loving me unconditionally, that one of the greatest gifts they gave me from a very early age was just a love of reading, but more importantly, a love of learning. So that still
Wow.
gets me excited every day. You know, I'm at the point in life where I've been fortunate. I don't have to do anything, but I don't want to not do something. And so I look for things, whether it's philanthropy or whether I'm very involved in investing, venture capital, also some angel investing that I'm doing now, and helping people grow businesses. So even though I'm the oldest I've ever been, life's as exciting as it's ever been.
When is your birthday in June?
June 28th.
June 28th. I'm marking my calendar to say happy birthday to you on that day. But since we are on live in here, so I want to say happy birthday in advance to you, Mark. And it's been a great honor to knowing to connect with you. There's a lot of learning for me today and for the audience also. I thank you for being so generous to spend time to share a lot of good things for us to make ourselves getting better every day, a little bit better, a little bit better, right? And that's how we become extraordinary, like you say. So thank you very much.